Scarato. Thank you so much. I'm going to edit a little bit of what I'm going to talk about. A lot has been covered. But staying competitive cannot come at the expense of our children's health. I'd like to let everyone know that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends reducing exposure to radio frequency radiation. And I'd like to read what they say about cell towers. An Egyptian study confirmed concerns that living near a mobile phone base station increased the risk for developing headaches, memory problems, dizziness, depression, sleep problems. We have been misled and told there is no scientific evidence, when in fact, there are thousands of studies showing effects at levels below allowable limits. In fact, the United States has among the highest allowable radio frequency levels in the world. I sent my PowerPoint that has that, and I'll be followed up with a document with citations on all of this. If you take a look at that, you'll see that the radiation limits for many other countries, including India, Poland, Italy, China, and Russia, are among the countries with lower limits of exposure. And what industry is doing is going to those countries, and there's actually an industry report which says that 5G cannot be deployed in these countries because of their more protective limits. And they are actively putting millions of dollars into trying to change those limits so that they can fully deploy 5G. Now, in the United States, the EPA was in development of setting proper safety standards. There are letters gotten through a FOIA that document this. We have this on ehtrust.org, the Environmental Health Trust website. They were defunded in 1996. An appropriations bill removed the money and in fact told them they cannot research this anymore. So we don't have any federally developed safety limits by the United States, any United States health agency. Now, a little bit later in 1999, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, nominated NIH's National Toxicology Program, this little history which is important, to study, to do large-scale animal research, to understand what the effect would be from long-term exposure. Because remember, the guidelines that were set in 1996, oh, I didn't mention this, were by the IEEE and ANSI and NCRIP, which were filled with industry military. And those limits, they're actually based on animal research, mostly mice, rats, some squirrel monkeys, small primates. And they were short-term testing, not long-term testing. What would happen to people exposed for a lifetime? So the FDA nominated the NTP to do this $30 million study that we just got the full results of last month on Halloween. And they found that at non-thermal levels, there was quote-unquote clear evidence of cancer in terms of the heart tumors. And of course, there was brain cancer classified as some evidence. So now the FDA is saying that they reject the findings of clear evidence of cancer. And something that you might want to think about is asking the FDA for the rationale for that. Where is the systematic review? Where is the report that details scientifically all the reasons they think that? There's a statement up online. It is absolutely not substantial. I mean, it's not, there needs to be more information if they're going to discount the United States premier test agency. You might hear that NIOSH or other agencies were involved in the development of the guidelines. However, they also issued letter after letter, which we have online, raising concerns for these limits because of the modulation, different tissues absorb this radiation differently, et cetera. You can go online to read about that. Now, we have the largest database of international policy. You'd asked questions about what countries are doing. I'll just add on to that Chile and Greece and even the LA School District have banned cell towers near schools. There's a Harvard report by the Center for Ethics called Captured Agency, how the FCC is dominated by the industry it regulates, which I highly recommend reading as sort of a starting point. It talks about how, and I'll quote, consumer safety, health, privacy, along with consumer wallets have all been overlooked, sacrificed, and raided due to unchecked industry influence. And it certainly is fascinating how we see the same PR firms, some of the same scientists involved in representing and defending the industry, the wireless industry, as are defending the coal industry, cigarettes, asbestos, etc. So the only one thing I just want to add is that I also gave you this pamphlet by the Baby Safe Project. Dr. Hugh Taylor, Chief of Obstetrics at Yale, please go online and watch his talk for the press conference of this campaign, which is about reducing exposure to wireless because of the research showing damage to the brain. And also there's the energy footprint. And there are industry reports that document that communications technology, as we are going to see with the Internet of Things, the projected growth is astronomical. This is not, this is an environmental nightmare if you just look at the energy use that we're going to be seeing. And what this industry report says is that they won't see any gains until 2025. And I will be sending you a more detailed report with all of this. Thank you.
They're particular about the brand they choose. In a repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel.
5G can be a tremendous boom to California, but only if it can be put up quickly and easily.
Hayward Assemblymember Bill Quark co-authored legislation that would make it even harder for cities like Piedmont to object to a tower.
You wouldn't have to go through the Planning Commission, through the City Council.
The former NASA scientist says he may resurrect the bill recently vetoed by the governor.
I know scientifically that putting up these cell phone towers is safe.
But the International Association of Firefighters disagrees. They began opposing cell towers on fire stations after firefighters complained of health problems.
These firefighters developed symptoms.
Dr. Gunnar Heuser conducted a pilot study on firefighters at a station with cell towers.
And the symptoms included problem with memory, problem with intermittent confusion, problem with weakness.
Heuser says their brain scans suggest even low-level RF can cause cell damage, and he worries about more vulnerable groups like kids.
So we found abnormal brain function in all of the firefighters we examined.
So, following lobbying by firefighters, Quark and his co-author exempted fire stations from their bill, making them one place cell companies couldn't put a tower.
This is the first piece of legislation that I think anyone's aware of where somebody got an exemption because they were concerned about health. Did they tell you at all about the study?
All I know is that when the firefighters ask, you know, I do what they ask me to do.
Because they're strong lobbyists.
Yes.
So if, say, school teachers and parents had a strong lobby and they asked you to pass something that would prevent these from going up in your schools, would you do that?
If I couldn't get the votes any other way.
Firefighter and cancer survivor Tony Stefani notes,
it's not only firefighters, it's the people that live in the general vicinity of these towers.
Current regulations don't take into account continuous low-level exposure from these small cells 24 hours a day.
More of these studies have to be done.
There are 230 scientists from 41 countries who have apparently reviewed more than 2,000 peer-reviewed studies, and they're calling on the World Health Organization to do more studies. They're not convinced that this is safe.
I think doing more studies is always a good thing.
Do you think that maybe you should consider putting a pause on legislation that speeds up these towers until there's definitive evidence that there is no harm?
We can do a lot of studies, and there are people right now, believe it or not, who are sure the world is flat.
Smoke clean with New Bel Air. Air clean tobacco.
I think the most important study is a study by the National Toxicology Program in a classic large carcinogenicity test, one of the largest ever performed, and for that matter, one of the most expensive. They found increased risk of the tumours which we believe radiofrequency radiation is causing in man. Particular tumours called schwannomas. In the rats, they were in the heart. In humans, they're often in the nerve, the ear nerve, the vestibular nerve.
At this point, the evidence has become sufficiently strong that cell phone radiation is a human carcinogen. A major development from California's Department of Public Health. High use of cell phones may be linked to certain types of cancer and other health effects, including brain cancer and tumors, lower sperm counts, headaches, and effects on learning, memory, hearing, behavior, and sleep.
If it was a real problem, I would know. If it was a real problem, the government would protect us. How come I'm not hearing about this? They're all things I've heard when I give seminars. You know, I get up there and they say, oh yeah, if this was really a problem, they would have told us. I am they. I am a, legitimate scientist, and I am telling you.
Did you know that cell phone, the one in your pocket, emits radio frequency radiation, as long as your phone's turned on, even if you're not talking or texting?
The American Academy of Pediatrics in over a dozen countries recommends reducing children's exposure to wireless radiation.
When using a cell phone, I always keep it away from my body. I use speakerphone or a headset like this.
To stop microwave exposure, I put my phone on airplane mode and turn off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth function.
I hold the phone at a distance and make sure it's not touching my body.
Cell phones are not toys. Children's brains and bodies are still developing and are vulnerable to wireless radiation. Practice safe and responsible habits with yourself and your children.
When using the computer, I always try to make sure my connection is corded, not wireless.
Remember not to use your cell phone in the car. The phone works at higher power in metal surroundings and bounces around, increasing your family's radiation exposure.
For their safety.
For your safety.
Because children are more vulnerable.
Remind them.
Remind yourself.
To limit your microwave radiation exposures.